My lord, the Targaryens have returned to Westeros. They're marching up the King's Road.
So, Daenerys Stormborn has returned. Tell me, has she brought dragons?
No, my lord. The dragons haven't been balanced yet. But they have something worse than dragons.
What could be worse than dragons?
Dothraki.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Tabletop Never Stop. Today I'm finally doing the Targaryen Starter Box. It's very late. I apologize for that mixture of life, and I actually recorded this once and didn't like it, but taking another shot at it today, so we'll see how it goes. And with that, let's just jump in. So first off, we have the Dothraki Screamers. I guess the first thing I want to say is we get told over and over again not to compare the units from different factions to each other because, they have access to different attachments and different tactics cards, and they're just not, it's not how the way the game's designed. And I totally agree with that. I think it's totally fair for that to be said. And I think it's also silly that we're not going to compare the units with each other. And, we're going to see here that these cavalry units we're about to see are not they're not costed the same that they are in other factions. And of course the answer to that is that, well, these guys have really good tactics cards that are going to benefit them. And I think that's true. I don't know if it's true enough, but let's just take a look and then we'll talk about it. So first off, we have the Dothraki Screamers. They're a speed 6 unit. They have a melee attack that hits on 3s with 7 and then 5 dice. They save on 5 ups, and they have a morale of 6 up. And then they're just a normal cavalry unit. So this is a 6-point cavalry unit, and it doesn't stack up that good, in my opinion, against the other cavalry units that are close to it in the game, which really there's only 2. There's the Ranger Trackers, which is not really a melee unit, and then there's the Stark Outriders, which are now a point more. So the Ranger Trackers are definitely worse at melee than the Screamers are, but they come with a bow, and they have a really cool ability that allows them to throw out vulnerable tokens. So maybe that's not a good comparison, but it does seem like what's going on here. And then the Outriders, they're a whole point more, but for that point, they get a whole extra defense, save on 4 ups. They get an extra dice, and they get 2 abilities. Makes you kind of go what are we getting here? Well, when we get to the tactics deck, we'll see what the Dothraki have that everyone else doesn't. It remains that the Screamers are the cheapest true melee cavalry unit in the game. I mean, really, the Ranger Trackers don't compare. These guys are much more dangerous than them, and we're getting them for a very cheap price. Next, we have the Dothraki Outriders. They are a speed 6 unit. They have a short range attack that hits on 3s with 7 and 5 dice. They save on 6 ups, and they have morale of 6 up. And they're nimble. And this nimble is pretty neat. When you bring the nimble in and the free maneuver, you can start 15 inches away from an enemy, make your free maneuver, take your shift of 3 inches, and then make your 6 range attack. And then shifting 3 inches back, potentially get yourself out of effective charging range of a lot of infantry. You can definitely hit and run, which is, feels pretty thematic. I do not understand really thematically or mechanically why they don't have a melee attack. I can literally see the Arek attached to the guy's saddle. I'm just not really sure what we're supposed to do with this guy. You can't shoot into melee in this game, so if you charge all your units into the enemy in round 2, what are these guys doing in round 3? The answer is not much. And then also just if an enemy manages to engage you, he's nothing to do besides retreat with them. I do think I could see myself bringing one of these guys because there's an attachment that they can take that will give them something to do once a scrum started, but I'm a little bummed they don't have a melee attack. Totally just took the wind out of my sails as far as being interested in playing these guys, to be totally honest. I'm sure people will have some defense for them, and let me know in the comments if you don't think it's a problem. Certainly be interested to hear about it. And again, it's hard not to stack these guys up against the Ranger Trackers for the same points. Not only the Ranger Trackers get a melee attack, they also get an extra point of armor. And nimble's not nothing. It's hard not to feel like the Outriders missing something. And I'm done comparing the units to other units, so we'll stop doing that now. And let's move on to the Dothraki Veterans. So these guys are 10 points, which is, hefty. Speed 6. They have a range attack, hitting on 3 ups with 7 and 5 dice. And then a melee attack, hitting on 3 ups with 8 and 5 dice. They save on 4 ups, and the morale is 5 up. They're normal cavalry with their 3 wounds and a free activation. And of course, their range attack is short range. And they have an order. Charging Volley. After this unit completes a ranged attack, this unit may make a free charge action against the targeted enemy. This is the same ability that the Bastard's Girls have, and the name of that has been changed to match this now, so this ability is always called Charging Volley, which is a nice little touch. It has rolling a lot more dice than the Bastard's Girls, and they have that free maneuver, so this is, pretty usable. No one likes to take 7 dice and then another 8, both on 3s, especially if you can manage to get a flank on with these guys. It's interesting for 2 points more, you can get 2 Screamers. But if you look at, if you think about on the charge, these guys do as much damage as 2 Screamers. And obviously 2 Screamers have a lot more wounds, but these guys have more defense. I try to not put all my eggs in one basket with giant units, but there is an argument that these guys are as effective as 2 Screamers for sure. Obviously you wouldn't want to bring a whole army of them because you'd be done with your building really quick. But it does feel like there's a space for one of them in an army for sure. Alright, this takes us to Jorah Mormont, the Wandering Knight. So this is one of those rare solo units. He's a speed of 5. He hits on a 4-up with 2 dice. Defense save of 4-up, and a morale save of 4-up. And then he has 2 wounds, and then the model activates with a free maneuver every turn, just like a normal cavalry unit. And he comes with an order called Scout Openings. Start of a friendly turn, 1 enemy combat unit within short range and line of sight become vulnerable and weakened. Okay, so I love Scout Openings. I think it's a really good ability. I think it's pretty reasonable to think that you could potentially get this off 4 or 5 times over the course of a game. So we're talking about 8 to 10 condition tokens potentially. It's a bit of a perfect scenario, but that is absolutely worth the 3 points that Jorah Mormont costs. Now the caveat to that is that there's now a lot of stuff in the game that deals automatic wounds at range, and Jorah is actually pretty vulnerable to that without only having 2 wounds. So there's the Trappers and a Stark version of that, and then of course Walder Frey can kill him with 2 activations. And I've heard people argue against this in the sense that who cares? Who cares if you use your Walder twice to get rid of my 3-point unit? Then I've used him effectively. Then he's worth that. And that's an interesting argument. It's true that he's not that expensive. If you're blasting Jorah Mormont, you're not blasting my commander's unit. On the other hand, for 2 activations, Walder can eliminate one of your activations. Of course, you don't know how often. It's hard to really know right now how often we're going to be seeing Walder. He is pretty expensive. You can bring 2 lists to a tournament, and if they don't have Walder in either of their lists, play your Jorah Mormont list, and if you steal Walder, don't play your Jorah Mormont list. I think Jorah's a pretty interesting unit. I would definitely be rocking him, but it's worth noting that he's very susceptible to any kind of automatic wound, so it's a thing to watch out for. Alright, so we are now into the attachments. We have the Outrider Co. here. They have the ability Order, mark target, start a friendly turn, 1 enemy in line of sight and long range becomes vulnerable. This is the same ability that the Ranger Trackers have, but the Outriders have to pay for it. That being said, if I was going to bring an Outrider, I would almost definitely put a Co in there. These Targaryen units are a little bit naked with stats, so we're not getting any special abilities, no Sundering, no Panic, at least not without doing stuff to get it. And so I think you're gonna want a vulnerable token. Putting it on an Outrider means that if there's no targets for the Outrider to attack, they have something to do still. It's long range just like it is on the trackers, so you're going to be able to use it. And of course there's nothing stopping you from putting this on a different attachment, and it totally would still work. You can make an enemy vulnerable before you charge them. And it might be worth thinking about even if you didn't have any Outriders. And this is a 1-point attachment, by the way. Next we have the Screamer Co. It's another 1-point attachment. They have Shattering Assault. This unit's charge attack gains Sundering. Probably worth sprinkling into an army list that has some open points. As I already kind of said, all these Dothraki cavalry units are kind of naked in the sense they don't have a lot of abilities. So access some Sundering could be pretty useful. We do get back into this kind of overcosted problem again, where now we're making our Dothraki Screamers cost 7 points. That's the Screamer Co. Here we have Jorah Mormont, the Exiled Knight. This is a 2-point attachment. He has Order, Stubborn Tenacity. When this unit passes a panic test, 1 enemy engaged with this unit suffers D3 wounds. And also Pathfinder, +1 movement and ignores dangerous, rough, and hindering keywords on terrain pieces. So these Dothraki units have pretty good morale for the most part, which makes Stubborn Tenacity pretty good ability, pretty good order, decent chance of... So you got a decent chance of dealing D3 wounds multiple times over the course of the game as long as Jorah survives. But, D3 wounds aren't that exciting. There's always a chance you roll 1. But there's always a chance you roll 3, and then that could be pretty good, especially against our high defense enemies. Pathfinder is actually really great, especially for cavalry, because we get to use that extra movement twice. So instead of being able to move 12 inches over in a turn, now this unit could potentially move 14. And then, of course, avoiding terrain allows a cavalry unit to show up in a place where it's totally unsuspected. Next, we have the commander version of Jorah Mormont. He has Order Adaptive Tactics. While this unit is engaged, you may expend a condition token on an enemy engaged with this unit as if it were any other condition token. And he still has Stubborn Tenacity, which we just talked about, which allows you to pass a panic test and deal D3 wounds. As far as adaptive tactics go, when Jorah's tactics cards are going to allow him to pass out some condition tokens, and then being able to then use them however you see fit is quite useful. We've talked about this before in other videos, but obviously this is giving you quite a bit of options. If you manage to put panic on an enemy and then they attack you, you can spend it as a weaken token, keep our fairly vulnerable cavalry units alive a little longer, and of course, being able to get vulnerable or panic when you need it is also really good. Next we have Khal Drogo, the commander attachment. There is no non-commander attachment, which thematically I think makes a lot of sense. It's hard to imagine Khal Drogo letting anyone else be the boss. Even Daenerys, later when we get a commander version of her, it'd be a little weird if there was just a non-commander Drogo running around. Maybe grumpy we got one less card, but thematically it's interesting and amusing. Anyway, he has Furious Charge. Enemies of this unit successfully charge become vulnerable. And then Onslaught, if this unit is targeted by the sword spot on the tactics board, it may make a free charge action instead of an attack action. Anything that can put out tokens is good for these Targaryen cavalry units because they just don't have any abilities, so they're going to have a hard time getting through armor. Some access to vulnerable is great. If you combine that with a flank where suddenly we're in business. And then Onslaught's pretty good too. Obviously we like our free charges as cavalry. Interestingly enough, the Dothraki veterans don't vibe super well with this because they would actually want, if they got the sword, they wouldn't want to take the free charge. They'd want to make the range attack if they were close enough, and then make their charge. But of course, there's nothing stopping you from putting Khal Drogo in the Flayed Men. It's actually kind of a good idea if you think about just that. It's a little they're a little more defensive, and now that we're in 1.5, they're actually slightly cheaper than the veterans too. Which so you're saving a point there. So they're not quite matching the raw damage potential of the veterans because all the dice the veterans get to roll, but still, they're certainly pretty dangerous and they're a little bit more defensive, and it's always nice to have our commander in a high defense unit so that we don't lose him before we're ready to. Alright, so here we are in our NCUs. We have Daenerys Targaryen, Khaleesi. She is a 4-point NCU, and she has Conviction of a True Khaleesi. She can influence a unit when she claims a spot on the tactics board, and while influencing a unit, that unit gains +1 movement and may re-roll any and all charge distances. So we already talked about getting the extra movement. It's pretty good for our cavalry units. And this effect could stack on Jorah, and there's one more way to increase movement, so we'll talk about how much we can min-max our speed when we get to that tactics card. So this is a bit, in my mind, the middle of the road 4-point NCU. Certainly some better ones out there, but there is some good synergy with our cavalry. That charge reroll is not nothing either because we want to hit and hit hard. Someone missing their charge is not a thing that we want, or even just getting one and still making it in, and getting the disorderly charge still could really ruin our potential alpha strike that we might be trying with these guys. So it's certainly a good ability. So here we have Illyrio Mopatis. He is a 3-point NCU. He has Illyrio's Boon. Once per game, when Illyrio claims a zone on the tactics board, you may replace that zone's effect with remove 1 activation token from 1 friendly combat unit, and then flip this card over to show its effect has been used. Alright, so this NCU gives us a 1 free time activation, and those are good. It's worth noting that this tactic it does have a free action, but it has less free actions / activations than some of our other factions. I do feel like free actions and free activations especially are like the most valuable, one of the most powerful effects in the game. So again, there's not as many tactics cards that can allow us, that give us access to that. So instead having having the ability to get a free activation with the NCU, in some ways it's better than doing it with a tactics card because we can do it like whenever we want. We don't have to like wait and hope the card comes. But of course, if we're doing it off our tactics deck, we can do it more than once, and we can't with Illyrio. But you know, free activation is pretty powerful. This is a pretty good 3-point NCU, although again, there's probably better ones, but it's certainly not bad. Alright, so this takes us to our tactics cards. First we have Blood of the Dragon. When a friendly combat unit successfully charges, attach this card to that unit until the end of the round. While attached, this unit automatically passes all panic tests and can never become panicked. Alright, so without Jorah, this card is giving us a little bit of protection. When we charge in, the enemy will counterattack us. We know we'll pass the panic test. That saves us from potentially taking 2 to 4 damage. But if we bring in Jorah, not only that, we're also now going to be dealing 1d3 damage automatically back, instead of taking panic damage. So this card synergizes really well with Jorah. Next we have Fury of the Dragon. When you claim a zone on the tactics board, replace that zone's effect with one friendly combat unit and make a free maneuver or retreat action. Until the end of the round, each time a friendly combat unit successfully charges, the defender becomes panicked or vulnerable. Alright, so this is it. This is the card that people are saving their counterplot for. You know, if you start with this card in your hand, I'm not saying you're going to win or anything, but I am saying when you lose, it's your fault. This is our Alpha Strike card. Depending on your force, you know, you could potentially get 3 or 4 charges off, and they could all result in a panicked or vulnerable token, which is what these Dothraki units really need, because I've already said this, but they're naked, they don't have any bonuses, so these tokens are going to allow them to like push damage through, and cavalry units really want to kill the unit that they're hitting. They do not want to get attacked back. These guys especially, if not really getting any benefit of being stuck in a melee, they need to kill and move on. And so Fury of the Dragon can really set you up, and you're already getting this free maneuver out of it too, so you should be able to use that to your advantage. Now obviously the opponent's not going to just sit by and let this happen. There are some stuff they can do to prevent you from just charging every single one of their units. They can move units out of the way, they can kind of create screens and things like that, so that this turn you can't charge all of your units in. But if enemies are moving away so you can't attack them, then you can focus on the enemies that you can. That's a thing you can definitely use to your advantage. Hit and run. After a friendly combat unit completes a melee attack, that unit will make a free retreat action and automatically counts as rolling a 6 for the retreat distance. If you control the maneuver spot, any enemy they disengaged from also becomes weakened. So this is another great cavalry card. I do wonder, as we're starting to see more and more of these, how useful these cards will be if we're running an all unsullied army. Not that a melee unit couldn't use this, but obviously cavalry want it the most. You charge in, you make your attack. Maybe you don't do that much damage, or you're really worried about getting countercharged. So you can play this card and you'll move away 12 inches, which is out of the effective range of most infantry, or at least a risky charge. And when you do get to go again, you can use your free maneuver to move right back into easy striking range and charge right back in. So this is a very dangerous card for a all cavalry unit to have. It's worth noting that Targaryens do not have access to cards that recover cards from the discard pile, and it makes sense because this will be one, if you could play it over and over again, it would be pretty devastating. Getting having the maneuver spot and getting a free weekend is actually pretty good, especially when we consider that again, our cavalry units, they only have 8 wounds, man. They're pretty vulnerable. So any weakened tokens we can put out there to keep our guys alive is going to be quite valuable. Next we have Fire and Blood. When a friendly combat unit successfully charges, choose one. This attack gains precision, hits from rolls of 6 do not allow defense saves, and also vicious. And if you control maneuver, gain both instead. So we're just adding a little bit of punch to our naked units. It's quite good. These abilities actually don't appear anywhere else really in the whole army, so it can stack with all the other stuff like Khal Drogo's ability to get vulnerable out when he charges. And then we have Swift Retreat. After a friendly combat unit is attacked with melee, the unit may immediately make a free retreat action. And then if you control maneuver, the enemy they disengage from automatically suffers D3 wounds. So this ability is good for everyone. Always want to be charging. It's a little better for the cavalry because they can use their free maneuver to get maybe into a flank. But as long as you get to go first next turn, or haven't activated yet, backing up so that you can get your charge off is, it's always a good card. We're seeing all the triggers are on maneuver, and they're actually all pretty effective. And we're seeing that all the triggers for the bonuses are on maneuver for the generic Targaryen cards, and they're all pretty effective. So what that, of course, means is the enemy should stop you from getting it if they can, and you should grab it if it's available. And, maneuver. And I imagine, once we have more options, not every single unit in our army is going to be cavalry. So, getting a maneuver for maybe your slowest unit, that whatever that might be, some neutral units or some unsullied, could be pretty useful. Unstoppable Advance. At the start of a friendly turn, attach this card to a friendly combat unit till the end of the round. While attached, this unit gains +1 movement, ignores the dangerous, hindering, and rough terrain keywords, and cannot suffer disorderly charges. Alright, so here's our next extra speed card. We already kind of talked about this with Jorah, but +1 speed's great for cavalry. Dangerous, hindering, and rough terrain, being able to ignore all that is also really effective. Not being able to suffer disorderly charges, again, this all cavalry army is going to be charging all the time, and missing out on those free rerolls would be bad, so that's not a bad option either. And then if we were to stack Jorah into a unit and then play Unstoppable Advance and Influence unit with the Khaleesi, we're now talking about +3 speed, which means that these cavalry units would have a total of 9 speed, and with the free maneuver they can move 18 inches on one activation. And we aren't playing the Westerosi 500 here, but there's a lot you can potentially do with that the enemy might not be expecting. And then finally we have Overrun, and this is I mentioned earlier that they do have a free action, and here it is. And Overrun, of course, is a really good tactics card. We've seen it before with the Mountain. It's always fun to play it, and it's never fun to have it played on you. Anyway, Overrun. When a friendly combat unit destroys an enemy with a melee attack, instead of maneuvering, that unit may pivot and then make a free charge action. If you control the maneuver spot, it gains +2 to its charge distance roll. So a free attack is great, but a free charge on into a flank that's not expecting it is way better. The +2 charge distance gives you some security because it's certainly it's pretty anticlimactic to make your Overrun charge and then not complete it. That would be a bummer. Really good card. Works really well with our Shock and Awe, with this Shock and Awe cavalry army that wants to hit you hard and fast before you can really recover and hit them back. Okay, and this takes us to our Commander Tactics cards. First off, we have Martial Superiority for Jorah Mormont. When an enemy combat unit attacks before attack dice are rolled, that attack rolls -2 dice and loses any abilities until the end of the turn. If they're attacking Jorah Mormont's unit, the enemy also becomes weakened. -2 dice is great. We've already talked about how our cavalry units are somewhat vulnerable in the sense that they can't take a lot of hits. So anytime we can take a dice away, that's quite good. Taking away abilities is also quite good. A lot of these guys don't have very high defense, so they don't really care if they're getting hit with Sundering per se. But there's lots of other devastating things out there. We certainly wouldn't want Vicious, or even some of the more scary abilities like the Great Axes have. If they're coming at Jorah, we gotta put out a weakened token. It's also a defensive ability, and then Jorah can of course spend condition tokens however he wants. So that's some nice synergy there with the actual commander attachment. Next we have Superior Flanking. When a friendly unit attacks an enemy in the flank or rear, the attacker rolls +3 attack dice and the defender becomes vulnerable. If you're running a cavalry army, this card should be pretty usable, and it puts some emphasis on trying to get flanks, and in theory it should be a core part of the game, so I'm glad to see it here. And finally we have Bravery in the Face of Death. When a friendly unit passes a morale test or successfully charges, you can restore up to 2 wounds to that unit. If the unit has only 1 remaining rank, restore D3 +1 wounds instead. So a little bit of healing. Cavalry actually respond quite well to healing because there's usually a pretty big difference between first and second rank, and by the time you're in first rank, you're only a couple hits away from dying, which is not great. Obviously this card's totally designed to be used on cavalry because when you're at 1 rank you get D3 +1 wounds, and cavalry basically half the time are going to be down to 1 rank. Either at 2 ranks or they're down to 1 rank. You of course can use it. There's some synergy here with the tactics card that guarantees that you will pass your morale test, but I actually much prefer using this on the successful charge, because it kind of creates a situation where like an enemy looks like it's not very dangerous. Maybe it's at 2 health, but then it declares a charge. You roll a 2 on your D3 and you get 3 wounds back, and then all of a sudden now you're back to full ranks and you're hitting the enemy at full ranks and finishing them off or whatever. Definitely a good card that synergizes well with all our cavalry. This takes us to Khal Drogo's tactics cards. First we have Devastating Impact. I've seen this before, but makes plenty of sense for all cavalry army. When a friendly unit declares a charge, that unit may reroll their charge distance die, and then their attack deals +2 additional automatic hits. If you control the sword spot, the unit automatically counts as having rolled a 6 for their charge distance, and they deal +2 wounds instead of hits. Cavalry, they want to get in, hit, and hopefully destroy the enemy so they can't attack them back. And so this card will help you do that. Also helps you get into the charge, which is always important to have happen. A very good synergy here with Khal Drogo himself, because he can get a free charge off claiming the sword spot, and then we get a bonus for claiming the sword spot. So that works out quite well. Next we have Ride by Attack, which is another card that we've seen before from Brendan Tully. When a friendly, unengaged cavalry unit activates, as its action this turn, that unit may pivot, march, and may move through enemies during this march. After completing this action, it may resolve 1 charge attack on 1 enemy it passed through. This includes just charge bonuses and flanks and rear bonuses based on the defender's line of sight at the point you begin the action. Meaning if you were to use this through someone's flank, you would get a flanking bonus. This is just as good as this is for Brendan Tully. This can sometimes allow you to attack enemies that maybe are protected by other enemies in front of them, since you're marching 12, although possibly even more with some other ways of increasing speed. So you can get to places that the enemy won't expect you to be able to get to, and then you get to, of course, get to pivot at the end of a march. So not only do you move through an enemy, attack them, but then you're now usually, a lot of times, if you charge through them, you'll be facing their rear. They have to either, if they're still around, they have to either turn to face you, or basically, allow you to continue to have access to their flank, which is probably going to result in them being destroyed. Great card for a cavalry list. Add some chaos to the enemy, and definitely fits well with this whole hit and keep on hitting strategy that these tactics cards and the units are kind of pushing us towards, I think. And finally we have Azdravat, which apparently means kill in Dothraki, which is, I'm going to take a minor tangent here. It's a little bit weird because I'm quite certain that the Dothraki language was developed by HBO. I mean, obviously it has the George R. R. Martin seal of approval on it, but I don't know if it really qualifies as being part of the book license. But hey, we're all friends here, and it's all one big happy Game of Thrones family, right? Anyway, when you claim the sword spot on the tactics board, attach this card to an enemy combat unit till the end of the round, and well-attached melee attacks targeting this unit gain critical blow and sundering. So these Dothraki units have very little access to critical blow, or no access to critical blow and very little access to sundering. So the ability to potentially get that with this card is quite good. It isn't necessarily that easy to use because you have to claim the sword spot on the tactics board, which is of course pretty valuable real estate. So you won't have access to it whenever you want. But being able to put basically be able to get those 2 bonuses when you're attacking dangerous enemies will be quite nice. And that actually completes our tour of the starter set for House Targaryen. So I don't know if wasn't clear. I'm a little bit divided on these guys. I want to like them. I do think it's in some ways interesting. If you wanted to jump into the game, it's not a bad spot to do it. I think you could do a lot with maybe 1 or 2 neutral units and the starter set. It's interesting seeing this new design space where we're getting what sort of undeniably less good units and then better tactics cards. It is managing to get more factions that feel different. Even though we even got some recycled tactics cards in a lot of these decks, the factions all feel really different still, which is definitely impressive. Oh, there was one thing I wanted to point out that I thought was weird. So here's the Dothraki veterans. Here's the Outrider Co., which is it's the same picture, and so that's, I don't think we've ever seen that before. A unit with the same artwork as a attachment, especially kind of weird when you consider it's like not even like the veteran attachment. It's it's the Outrider attachment. Not that that really matters, but what's up, Simon? You couldn't pay for one more piece of artwork? Seems a little weird. So that is the House Targaryen Starter Set. Obviously, there's more coming for this set. I think really more than anyone else, it's like Where the Unsullied, which is I think almost more iconic than the Dothraki. She certainly Daenerys certainly spends more time with them. And then the other super obvious one is Where the Dragons, and nothing we can really do besides be patient. Certainly very curious to see what happens with that, and how the faction evolves going forward. Not only the dragons, but just like the commander version of Daenerys. I think we're all waiting for. And that's pretty much all I wanted to say about this box. So thanks so much for watching. I apologize for the skit, and we'll see you in the next one.